Hi boys and girls, this is lesson 7.1, all about converting liquid measures with the U.S. customary units. So you know we've talked about liquid measures before with milliliters and liters. That was when we were talking about the metric system. Now we're going to talk about the U.S. customary units for measuring with liquids. Okay? Get that written in your notebook as well as, I should say, today's date. When you have that done and you're ready, come on back. All right, the first thing I want you to do is complete the math message, which is at the top of Math Journal, page 228. This section up here that says math message, just complete this right here. When you have that done, come on back and we'll talk about it. Okay, so I'm really excited that we're finally to this lesson because I absolutely love this little graphic. I have used it a lot in my adult life when I'm trying to figure out measurements of things. Sadly, I wasn't taught it when I was your age. It would have really helped me out. But let's just talk it through, okay? So first you see that the outside of this big drawing that is done very nicely here and will be done very messily over here. The outside is a big G. And what do you suppose that G stands for? Yes, indeed, gallon. So the G is for gallon. So we'll just make sure that we know that, right? And then inside of 1 gallon, you can see there are 4 Q's. Those Q's stand for quarts, right? So Q is quart. Then you can see that inside of each Q there are 2 P's. Those P's stand for pints. I know it's spelled pint, but it's actually pronounced pints. Okay? And then inside of the pints there are 2 little C's. And those C's inside each one, there's 2 in each one of the P's. Those C's are for cups. So you should have this written in your notes. Okay? Ooh, I keep flipping that over there. So put an S on cups so that you have it. Okay? So you need to make sure that you understand that's what those stand for. And then once you do, this little drawing comes in handy big time. So if the P is a pint, so now I'm looking at what it says here to you. If the P is 1 pint, so one of these P's would be 1 pint, how many cups does that equal? Well, there are 2 C's inside there, right? So hopefully you figured out that we would then say, well, that would be 2 cups. 1 pint is 2 cups. And then when you look at the quarts, you can see that there's, in this big Q, how many pints are there? Hopefully you can see there are 2 pints in there. So you're going to say, well, that's 2 pints. And then this one's a little tricky for half of a gallon. Well, if the full thing is a gallon, half of the gallon, right, would be worth how many quarts? Hopefully you can see that there are 2 big Q's there. So you're going to still say that's 2. Half a gallon is 2 quarts. And 1 gallon, so that's the big G. How many Q's are in the big G altogether? Hopefully you see there are 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this helps you to be able to realize how many cups are in a pint, how many pints in a quart, how many quarts are in a gallon. If I know that, I also know how many cups are in a gallon, right? I could add up all of the C's and figure out how many cups in 1 whole gallon. Or I could do that without having to count them all by doing some multiplication. Hopefully you see that, and hopefully you see that's where we're going. So it's saying, think, how can the picture to the right help you remember how many cups are in a pint, how many pints are in a quart, and how many quarts are in a gallon? Hopefully you get this, and this all makes good sense to you. So if you get all that, that's awesome. We're going to use it to help us complete the bottom of the page, but before we do that, we're going to take a look at the next page in your math journal. And the top of it is about measuring capacity as well. So I want you to take a look. So this is one way that we could be looking at it. And this is another way. We're still looking at the same information. So here it's telling us gallons and quarts. So in 1 gallon, there are 4 quarts. In 2 gallons, there are 8 quarts. You can see how this is a way of showing the same thing. We would just have to draw 2 big G's for this, right? And it goes on to talk about quarts and pints. So in 1 quart, there are 2 pints. That's the same thing here. In 1 quart, there are 2 pints, 2 P's, right? So that's what that's showing you. And then pints to cups. In 1 pint, there are 2 cups. 1 pint, 1 P, there are 2 C's. So hopefully you can see these are telling you the same thing. They're just laid out differently for you, right? I can use either of these to help me complete these 2-column tables. Let's do a couple of them together, and then you're going to finish the page and come back and check it. So if I look at it and I say, all right, so here I've got 1 pint is equal to how many cups? I know that 1 pint is 2 cups because I just had talked about that before. I can fill that in. I can look at it right here and say 2 C's are in the P. I can look over here, pints and cups, 1 pint, 2 cups. I can use any of that, right? So then how many cups would be in 2 pints? Hopefully you can follow that along using this or this. And then here when I get to, well, there's 5 pints. I'm still okay on either one, right? Yep, I'm still good. And then when you get to the bottom one there, it's saying, okay, well, I have 16 cups, so how many pints is that? So how could I figure that out? So here I've got a thing on cups. Here's 6 cups. Here's 10 cups. If I add 6 plus 10, I'm at 16. So if I'm going to add these bottom ones for cups, can I add the top ones for pints? 5 and 3, meaning I'm going to end up with 8 pints down there. All right. Hopefully that makes sense to you. You can use either of the diagrams to finish the rest of this math journal page. When you get the math journal page done, then I want you to come back and take a look at it, and we'll talk about a few of those on the other side of this. So pause the video while you complete the page, and then come on back. All right, so here are the answers to that page. So hopefully they all made pretty good sense to you. I do just want to talk through questions 2 and 3 to make sure you're good there. So number 2 said, Tricia has a container with a capacity larger than 2 cups, but smaller than 1 gallon. Which of these could be the container's capacity? So if it's larger than 2 cups, obviously I could cross off the, cups, because it can't be that. And it says larger than 2 cups, well, a pint is 2 cups, so it can't be that. And it said smaller than a gallon. Hopefully you were able to get rid of all the other options and leave yourself with a quart. And then Sue and her sister Cindy have a lemonade stand. They want to make 8 gallons of lemonade. They only have 1 quart containers. How many 1 quart containers will they need to hold 8 gallons of lemonade? So you're comparing quarts and gallons. Okay, so that's that page. Now let me just ask you some questions for you to think about, okay? So here's a question for you. So if Joan has a quart of frozen yogurt, how many pints does she have? Hopefully you can tell me, well, a quart equals 2 pints, 2 P's inside that Q. Hopefully that's what you get. So if she had 4 quarts, how many pints would she have? So hopefully you can tell me 8 pints. So how does knowing there are 2 pints in 1 quart help you to solve that? Hopefully you knew you could multiply the number of quarts by 2, right? So we're setting up to make sure that you can understand that there's a relationship, both using the diagram or using the number line, but there's also a relationship if you look down the line of these. So if I look column to column, so I go from, I know 1 quart is 2 pints. So if I go 1 times 2, so now I have 2 quarts. If I did times 2 on this side, I could do times 2 on this side too, right? So 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 or 2 times 2 is 3. 4 times 2. No, that's not right. Oh, I'm telling you some crazy things that don't listen. I should say 1 times 3. Okay, let's do a little erasing here. So the top one is times 2, but then when I go to the next one and I want to go from 1 to 3 here, from 1 to 3, I have to do times 3, right? 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. That is correct. All right, so there's a relationship if I'm working that way as well, and hopefully you can use that relationship and your understanding of that to help you to solve some of these problems without having to use this diagram, without having to have a number line set up for you as well. Hopefully you can figure out this is a multiplication on purpose. All right, so the next step for you, go ahead and fill out the page 229, the questions underneath the gallons, quarts, measuring things that we showed earlier. When you have those questions filled out, come back one more time and check your answers. And then that will be it for tonight's, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night.